Peacekeepers. How the UN failed in Bosnia. Peter Jennings reporting.
With the Serbs overrunning so many towns throughout Bosnia, the UN designated 6 pockets of Bosnian territory as safe areas. The people in those areas would be protected by the UN, even if that meant using force. Gorazde in southeast Bosnia was one of those safe havens. The responsibility for protecting the safe areas belongs to the United Nations military commander on the ground. Last year, that was Lieutenant General Sir Michael Rose, a popular British war hero. He got some of the credit for stopping the Serb shelling of Sarajevo. But it wasn't long before the Serbs challenged Rose again at Gorazde. For 28 days last spring, the Serbs attacked the Gorazde safe area, firing round after round of shells into the town. It was a blatant assault on a civilian population, a clear violation of the whole concept of safe havens. But the United Nations did not deter the attacks on Gorazde. We went back to the town, still encircled by Serb forces, to reconstruct what really happened there. The attack began on the outer edges of the safe area, the small villages surrounding the main town. From the outlying villages, thousands of refugees flooded into the center of Gorazde. The group of 4 UN military observers inside Gorazde sent daily cables back to Sarajevo headquarters, describing in detail what they saw as the start of a major offensive against the Gorazde pocket. But to their dismay, General Rose, who was receiving the cables, played down the attack and publicly questioned their assessment.
But I've long since ceased to believe the first reports I hear in this country.
Accompanying General Rose was Major Pat Stogren, a Canadian military observer for the United Nations.
General Rose made a statement that he felt, words to the effect that he felt the reports coming out of the pocket were grossly exaggerated, and that he was sending in more military observers to verify the situation.
Major Stogren went into Gorazde along with a team of General Rose's hand-picked men. It didn't take long for him to conclude that General Rose had it wrong.
There was heavy shelling going down, and the senior of General Rose's men, he asked me point blank range. He said, what do you make of this? And I said, in no uncertain terms, that there is a major offensive going on.
It was General Rose's job to deter attacks against safe areas, and he had the power to call in military force to do so. At his disposal, warplanes from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization based in nearby Italy. Admiral Leighton Smith, in charge of the NATO force, had a list of targets ready to go.
My recommendation to General Rose, I think consistently, was we have the capability. My recommendation is more robustness, but he is the ground commander. I saw myself as supporting him in that role, and he chose not to be more robust.
Major Stogren says that Bosnian soldiers were simply overwhelmed.
They were fighting desperately for their own families. That's the way I viewed it on the ground. They were certainly committed to defending the city of Gorazde.
Instead of using force, General Rose tried to negotiate a peace with the Serbs. But the Serbs tricked him. They agreed to a 24-hour truce and then used that time to seize a strategic high ground right above the center of Gorazde town. Finally, General Rose had had enough.
He asked me to provide close air support. It took me less than 1 second to say yes, and we had aircraft in working the target.
It was the first air-to-ground attack in NATO's 45-year history.
I remember the aircraft coming in. It was actually a very proud moment for me as a member of NATO to see this.
I got the target on my nose.
Yeah, what are you aiming at, Tim?
I'm right at a tent.
That is correct, a tent. The first NATO airstrike in its history hit one Serb command tent.
We have bomb splash, bomb splash.
Do you think the Serbs got the message?
Well, definitely not, sir. They were back at it on the morning of the 11th.
General Rose called in airstrikes again. This time they hit 2 armored personnel carriers and a truck. But the Serbs still didn't get the message. They continued their assault against Gorazde. Back in Sarajevo, General Rose, unwilling to take stronger military action, seemed to be backing off. 2 days later, these pictures were recorded on a home video camera inside the Gorazde hospital.
A lot of us, even doctors, nurses, sometimes was crying. And, you know, a lot of these wounded people, dead persons, was our relatives, friends, and it was very hard.
Dr. Alija Begovic, the director of Gorazde Hospital, and his staff were overwhelmed.
Mainly, those victims were civilian children, women in their flats, in their houses, in front of houses.
Shelling of Gorazde continued. The United Nations did not call in airstrikes. And with no real threat to stop them, the Serbs unleashed an all-out assault on the town. Gorazde's main hospital, clearly a civilian target, was hit repeatedly.
Those shells was falling down all around the hospital, sometimes on the roof, but in front of gates, in front of doors.
Finally, after 26 days of shelling, NATO took the initiative and issued an ultimatum to the Serbs. Stop your bombardment of the safe area or your weapons will be destroyed. It took 2 days, but finally the Serbs began to pull back. UN helicopters were allowed in, and a massive medevac began.
Peter Jennings reporting. The Peacekeepers, how the UN failed in